Does anyone have a question they would like to ask?
I have a question, Stuart.
Yes.
Could you please talk about psychic, the connection between psychic pain generating or causing physical pain, please?
And what do you mean by psychic pain?
Something that's going on emotionally or...
Well, that's not psychic, that's emotional.
Emotional, okay. I'm sorry, could you talk about that?
Well, when you're emotionally congested and you get tight inside that way, it's going to create pain. The body responds. When the heart is open and there's love and joy, the body responds. You understand? I mean, your condition, physically, mentally, will absolutely impact the health of your body. If you're depressed, the body is going to respond. It's going to get tighter. It's going to get more tense. Understand? If you're nervous about this and nervous about, the body responds. I mean, people get stressed out and they wind up getting heart conditions. They wind up burning out. It's the body can't deal with the intensity of the pressure. So there's one or two answers to this. Either you build a system inside that can deal with it, or you just walk away from it because it's too much. I mean, you know, relationships between people take an emotional toll. They eat people up, you know? We're dealing with somebody else's ego, with their ideas, what they think is right, you know, that doesn't coincide with what we believe, and it eats us up, creates pain. So my answer to that is you got to build a system inside that is strong enough to deal with it. Walking away from it doesn't really make it work because eventually it's going to come back again. But okay, I am getting stressed, I'm getting it, I got to get stronger. I mean, in this subject, you know, I think there's a very good chance, you know, in October that I'm going to give a talk to the CEOs and CFOs of JP Morgan Chase. I was just almost invited today to do this. I mean, you talk about stress and people living in enormous stress, you know, and not being able to deal with it. And these are very bright, high, wealthy people that live in a world of unbelievable stress. And I'm sure it affects their bodies, it affects their minds, it affects everything, their hearts, their soul, their everything, you know? So the answer is really, okay, I am not big enough to deal with this. I got to get bigger. And by bigger, I don't mean gaining 100 pounds. You know, I mean, you get bigger inside, you get stronger inside, you develop a system that can deal with that stress. When I was younger, I used to put myself in these stressful situations all the time because I knew that they would remind me that I had to grow spiritually, where I can transform something that seemed to be impossible into a little tiny thing. And it always worked. It was extraordinary how I grew because of these things I took on my shoulders. The alternative was to get completely stressed out and crazy, and I refused to do that. So I had to grow. I had to get big enough to deal with situations that initially seemed almost impossible to deal with. And I was young and, you know, a little bit nuts. And I threw myself into these things, you know? And I said, holy shit, what did you get involved with, Stuart? Doing this. And then I grew and these major situations became minor situations. And then bigger ones came. I mean, I mean, even in my business, I started out selling $20 things, $10 things, and it eventually evolved into, I get phone calls. Sotheby's wants to do a private sale with a certain object that it was worth a fortune. Are you interested? Yes. Where the hell? I didn't even know where I was going to get the money, but I knew what it was worth. So I said, okay, I'm interested. And then I went and got the money to do it. And this is a lot of money. So I used to put myself into situations like I don't do that as much anymore, because I really grew because of that, making it capable for me to deal with, most of the stress that comes into my life. That's the alternative. I mean, either you grow or you get swamped by it, And that's emotional things too. Get big enough to love them unconditionally. You got to be very big to do that inside, to love somebody no matter how much bullshit they present to you, and how much ego they present. You love them. And all of that becomes tiny. It doesn't matter. You see what's behind all that. And you can love somebody.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome. You got to remember, I say it all the time, there are no negative situations. There's just unbelievable opportunities all the time to grow. So you take negativity and you turn it into something that helps you to get to God. Because that's the only place you can go to get the energy in order to deal with these things that go on in the world. There's so much stuff goes on in this world that's just nonsense and madness. And it's not very far from home. It's in our families, in our jobs, the way we earn a living, it's right, within the four walls of the room we live in, or the house we live in. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart, could you talk about duality versus non-duality?
Duality versus non-duality?
Yes.
Okay. But, duality is just conflict. It's right, wrong, positive, negative, good, bad. It's always things in conflict. Non-duality is harmony, balance, being able to create a dialectic and a marriage between opposites that allows something to be born from it that's of a higher nature. That's the difference. It's either right, wrong, good, bad, black, white, positive, negative, conflict, endless arguments inside ourselves, the inability to function with any clarity when that happens. Or we get, again, we get strong enough inside to unify opposites and allow these opposites to come together and give birth to something of a transcendental nature. That's non-duality. That's what this meditation is for, to unify. Because when you function in the mind, it's always going to be duality. It's always going to be right, wrong, conflict, and that really isn't a higher level of functioning. I mean, that's endless tension in ourselves. But given the capacity and building the capacity to unify these opposites, create a dialectic. Old philosophical principle goes back thousands of years to create that harmony and give birth to a completely new experience in your life from these opposites. That's non-duality. So the polar opposites merge. It's when I talk about the energy moving through the sexual area and the yin and the yang, come together. There's a marriage of yin and yang, gives birth to Kundalini. Otherwise, you have male, female battling with each other all the time, not only in the world with all the stuff that goes on in this world, but inside ourselves.
Thank you, Stuart.
I
was
hope you
amazing.
understand that. It's a little bit esoteric, but it's very,
That was perfect.
very basic. Does anyone else have a question?
Stuart, on that topic, can you just talk about the approach to that marriage, to that union, within and of course without, obviously not arguing with partner.
Pre the dialectic is a lot of confusion and tension. It's a lot of battling inside oneself. Creates an enormous amount of stress in people because they're trying to figure out the world instead of just being in the world. And there's a big difference because first of all, you're never going to be able to figure out this place. Nobody's done it since the beginning. I mean, even Einstein, it must be God. The greatest brain, probably of the 20th century, just shrugged his shoulders one day and said, it must be God. I can't comprehend the totality of it. So it becomes the difference between trying to figure out what the hell this world is all about or being in it, creating harmony, balance in oneself, becoming a living expression of God's energy, of higher energy in the world. That can only take place if we unify the opposites, the polarity, the duality inside ourselves, so that we master the conflict and we learn how to unify these things so they no longer become a battle, an impossible battle going on in ourselves, trying to figure out what the hell is right or wrong in the world. And then you use everything as a tool to get to God. Everything becomes an opportunity to grow. And then you transcend the the duality, the polarity in yourself. When everything that happens to you becomes an opportunity to learn, to grow, to build yourself as a human being. That takes enormous strength inside because it's too easy to get swept away in right, wrong, good, what we think, we don't think, So I think, it's a very important subject because it's not only a subject of a metaphysical subject, it's a very pragmatic subject of just basically living in the world. And stop this bullshit thing in the brain that I am going to figure this place out. I'm going to logically work all this. They haven't been able to do it for thousands of years, millions of years, and nobody's going to do it today where the world is twice as intense and 100 times more, conflicted probably than it's ever been. Even this crap you read about, COVID, I'm not going to get a vaccine. I am going to get, it's just insane, what goes on. Where people's opinions dominate the world. And, look, who knows whose opinion is right or wrong? You got to find out in yourself what gets you closer to God, what makes you grow, how to use duality, polarity as tools to grow, and that will create the dialectic. That will unify the opposites. Again, it gets back to it's all up to each individual and how they work on themselves. It really gets back to this all the time. What effort a human being is willing to make to work on themselves, to do what they have to do to grow, not what's convenient, not what they think have, but really what they have to do to grow. That really determines whether you have a spiritual life or not. Because that will make you build a system that will unify opposites. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? And again, this is hard to do because in order to do it, there has to be a need to do it. And there has to be a need to change and to get out of that kind of conditioned way of living that we've been living with for so long that it almost kind of deadens us, you know? But that need to change, that need to say, okay, what do I have to do? What do I really have to do to get to God? And then do it. Have the guts to step into the unknown, to take, to use the gifts that God has put in your life to grow and develop them. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? I've been announcing this interview I'm doing on Monday, and I couldn't figure out how the hell you get it to people, So, people should get in touch with me and I can email. But here's what I decided that it really can work, On Monday morning, I will send out an email to everybody or a MailChimp mass email to everybody that studies with me. If you know people that are interested in coming to this interview on Monday to find out what we do and maybe about my book or whatever, there's this incredible thing in the email called forward. Forward this to somebody who they will get the link by you just clicking on forward. I think that's the best way to do this. If you know 2 or 3 people that might be interested, just call them and say, I'm going to invite you to this talk. You might be interested, and forward them the link. You get to hundreds of people that way, So that's Monday morning. I will send out an email inviting all of you, everybody here in Europe, in Israel, South America, to the event. Just forward it to people you think might be interested. But I would even get in touch with them and tell them, I'm going to invite you to this thing. If you want to come, you just have to click on the link. You will be instantly there.
I have a question about that, Stuart. So when we say I'm going to invite you to that thing, is there a 25 words or less blurb that you could share in advance that would say what that thing is in a cogent way?
And what time? What time in Pacific time also? So that
8.
It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
11 o'clock here. It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
In Brazil, it's 9 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock. Because Brazil is an hour later.
Yeah, I just wanted a blurb that I could say in advance to. There's a few people that I want to say.
Thing there that says message, and you can write. I'll write something.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It'll be in the invitation. I'll write something. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, anyway, God bless you all. Thank you. And, there'll be a class on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to being here and to being with all of you. And just take it all in. Create non-duality. Create clarity in yourself. You know, you can do it. It's just there. We have all the tools. Just have to do the work. Build a system that enables us to do that. So bless you all and thank you. And I will see all of you, I hope, on Sunday. Okay, thank you. Good night.
Love you, Stuart. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Stuart.
Stuart.